Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going under the big top.
Ooh, yeah. You know,
I like it.
we're going to be looking at the lives of circus sideshow performers.
All right.
You know, the ones who were called human wonders back in the day,
Great.
sometimes freaks. And we've got a really fascinating article here called The Lives of 20 Real-Life Circus Performers.
Oh, wow.
And I think this is going to be really interesting because it's going to kind of shatter some of the preconceived notions we might have about sideshow performers.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of history. You know, it rarely fits neatly into those boxes that we try to put it in.
Yeah.
And these weren't just performers. They were people trying to navigate a world that wasn't always kind to those who stood out, you know?
Absolutely. And we're talking about the late 19th, early 20th centuries,
Right.
when the freak show was, kind of at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
But this article makes it clear that, it wasn't all the same experience for everybody.
Scally. Some achieved a level of wealth and acceptance that I think a lot of us, even today would envy.
Yeah.
But others faced immense exploitation and prejudice, you
Right.
know. So it's difficult to look back at this era without some very mixed feelings.
Yeah, let's get into some specific stories. And I think, we can't talk about sideshows without talking about Chang and Eng Bunker.
Right, the original Siamese twins.
Yeah, and they toured the world.
Mm.
They settled in America. They even became plantation owners.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling to think about, achieving that level of success while conjoined.
They were shrewd businessmen. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that complexity you mentioned of viewing historical figures through a modern lens.
Right.
Owning a plantation in the antebellum South is not something that sits well with us today.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It's definitely a stark reminder that normal is a very fluid concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shaped by, the time and place we live in. Yeah. Now, for another fascinating figure, let's step into the world of P.T. Barnum,
Okay.
the master showman and his most famous protege general, Tom Thumb.
Oh, Charles Stratton, right?
Yes.
A man who stopped growing at 6 months old
That's right.
and was marketed as like this miniature European nobleman.
Mm-hmm.
Did people actually believe he was royalty?
Well, Barnum was a genius at weaving these narratives that just captured the public's imagination.
Right.
Think about it. No internet, no television.
Yeah.
People craved the unusual. They craved the exotic.
Right.
And Barnum gave them a story they wanted to believe.
And it worked.
It did.
I mean, General Tom Thumb dined with royalty, performed for presidents.
He did. It's amazing.
Talk about defying expectations.
Yeah, but, this article also highlights the performers who weren't so lucky.
Right.
The tragic cases where the allure of the spectacle overshadowed basic human dignity.
Yeah.
So in that vein, let's consider Grady Stiles, the lobster boy,
Okay.
whose life was marred by violence and, ultimately ended in murder.
Yeah. That story gives me chills just reading it.
That's a tough one.
It seems he both inflicted and suffered terrible abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Fame and fortune don't guarantee happiness, do they?
Indeed, and it compels us to consider the psychological impact of being labeled as different,
Yeah.
especially in an environment that profited from that difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to show you just how varied these experiences were, let's compare Stiles' life with that of Myrtle Corbin, the four-legged woman.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she also had a physical difference that was considered unusual,
Right.
but she led a relatively normal life. She married, she had children.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine the strength it must have taken to forge that kind of life in a time when simply existing outside the norm was a spectacle?
It's remarkable. And that's why these stories, I think, are so compelling. They force us to confront our assumptions about what it means to be normal
Right.
and how those assumptions have evolved over time.
It makes you wonder if these individuals were alive today, would they be celebrated for their uniqueness or would they still be relegated to the fringes of society?
That is a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And it leads us to other performers who actively fought for their dignity
Yeah.
and challenged that freak label.
Yeah. People like Annie Jones, the bearded woman.
Yes.
Who, despite being exhibited, became an advocate for herself and others like her.
Absolutely. And of course, there's Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man,
Right.
whose story, though often sensationalized, ultimately speaks to, I think, the human longing for connection and understanding,
Yeah.
even if it's profound physical differences.
It's a reminder that, these weren't just curiosities to be gawked at.
Yeah.
They were individuals with hopes and dreams and a desire to live their lives on their own terms.
Precisely. They were pioneers in a way, forcing society to confront its own prejudices and grapple with what it truly means to be human. I think that's powerful.
Yeah. It's interesting as we dig into these stories, I'm seeing kind of like the sideshow mirrored the entertainment industry in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, like take Cuckoo the bird girl, for instance.
Right.
Her real name was Minnie Woolsey, and she had a rare form of dwarfism.
Huh?
And she was often presented in costumes and poses, to emphasize her bird-like features,
Oh, wow.
which kind of blurs the lines between human and animal,
Right. It raises all sorts of questions about exploitation,
Yeah.
the power dynamics at play.
Yeah. It's unsettling to think about how someone's difference could be used for profit like that.
Yeah, for sure. But, within that same system, you also find performers who manage to leverage their unique talents to achieve success,
Okay.
even freedom.
Like who?
Well, like Millie and Christine McCoy, the two-headed nightingales,
Okay, yeah.
conjoined twins born into slavery.
Wow.
And they use their incredible singing voices to buy their freedom.
Oh my gosh.
Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
They turned what was intended to be a source of their oppression into a path to liberation.
That is so powerful.
It is.
It speaks to resilience and just the power of talent to transcend even those unjust circumstances.
Absolutely. And speaking of transcending limitations,
Okay.
this article also talks about Jack Earl, the world's tallest man.
How tall was he?
Over 8 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah. His height was due to gigantism.
Right.
And while he did perform in sideshows, he also transitioned into acting and poetry.
Oh, wow. So he was multi-talented.
It shows that, even those with extraordinary physical traits weren't limited to just being spectacles.
Yeah. It's like he had a whole other side to him.
He did a creative side.
Yeah. And it makes you realize how much we tend to define people by what we see first,
Yeah.
rather than who they really are as a person.
It's a very human tendency.
Yeah.
But one we should constantly challenge.
Right.
Now, there are two more individuals in this article that I find particularly fascinating.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Who are they?
Violetta Eloisio Wagner, the human torso singer.
What a singer without limbs.
Yes.
That's incredible.
I know her story is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to adapt and overcome.
Wow.
She refused to let her physical limitations define her and became a celebrated performer.
That's amazing.
And then there's James Morris, the rubber man.
The rubber man, was he like a contortionist?
Precisely.
Oh, wow.
He had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which gave him incredible flexibility.
Okay.
And he just captivated audiences with his ability to contort his body into these seemingly impossible positions.
I mean, it's amazing how these performers turned what some might consider weaknesses into strength.
Yeah, they flipped the script, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our perception of normal is often completely arbitrary.
Right.
And what sets us apart can also be what makes us extraordinary.
And this goes beyond just physical differences, right?
It does.
Like
We're
what else?
well, think about how society viewed these performers back then.
Yeah.
They were ostracized,
Right.
labeled as freaks.
Yeah.
But many of them found community and acceptance within the sideshow world.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was a space where their differences were not just tolerated,
Yeah.
but celebrated.
So it was like they created their own little world
In a way they did.
where they could just be themselves.
Without judgment.
And in doing so, they kind of challenged society's notions of what was acceptable.
Absolutely.
Forced people to confront their own prejudices.
Their biases.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if the sideshow, despite its, exploitative aspects, also played a role in paving the way for greater acceptance of diversity.
That's a very complex question.
Yeah.
One that historians continue to debate.
Right.
But what's undeniable is that these individuals left their mark on history.
Yeah?
They challenged norms, they defied expectations, and lived lives that were anything but ordinary.
That's for sure. Their stories are a reminder that the human experience is vast and varied,
Absolutely.
and that true beauty really lies in embracing that diversity.
Exactly. And while the era of the sideshow may be over, I think the lessons we can glean from these individuals are timeless.
It's fascinating how even after the sideshow era, kind of ended, some of these performers continue to challenge our perceptions.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, like Julia Pastrana, the bearded woman, and Isaac Sprague, the living skeleton, they faced exploitation even in death.
Oh, wow. In what way?
Well, their bodies were preserved and displayed,
Oh, right.
reducing them to mere curiosities even after their lives had ended.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder of the ethical complexities surrounding the human body,
Mm-hmm.
that enduring fascination with the unusual, you
It's
know.
heartbreaking to think about the indignity they suffered,
Right.
even when they were no longer able to defend themselves.
Yeah, but amidst these tragic tales, you also see the emergence of individuals who actively fought for their dignity
Okay.
and challenged the way society viewed them.
Like who?
Well, we talked about Annie Jones before, another bearded woman,
Right.
and she used her platform to speak out against the label freak
Good for her.
and to advocate for the humane treatment of sideshow performers.
Yeah, and of course there's Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, whose
Uh,
story has just resonated through the years.
It has.
He really transcended his physical condition
He did.
and became a symbol of resilience and the search for acceptance.
Yeah, it's important to remember that Merrick's story, while inspiring, was also shaped by the prejudices of his time.
Of course.
The very fact that he was seen as an anomaly, speaks to the narrowness of society's definition of normal back then.
It's almost like we're seeing two sides of the same coin here.
In a way, yes.
On one hand, the sideshow exploited difference for profit.
Right.
But on the other hand, it also provided a platform for these individuals to be seen, heard, and in some cases to challenge the very system that both confined and defined them.
That's a really good point. I think that's where the real takeaway lies,
Yeah.
These stories from the past aren't just historical curiosities.
right.
They hold a mirror up to our present.
Mm.
They force us to confront our own attitudes towards difference and to question whether we've truly moved beyond the spectacle.
So what can we learn from all of this?
Well, I think the key takeaway is empathy.
Empathy.
The ability to step outside ourselves and try to understand the experiences of others,
Right.
even those who may seem vastly different from us.
We've talked about a lot of performers today.
We have.
Some who found success and happiness, and others whose lives were marked by tragedy and exploitation.
Yes, but each one of them, in their own way, challenged us to expand our definition of what it means to be human.
And perhaps by remembering their stories, we can learn to celebrate the beautiful tapestry of human diversity
I love that.
and create a world where difference is no longer a source of fear or exploitation, but a source of strength and wonder.
Beautifully said.
Well, on that note, we'll bring this deep dive to a close.
Okay.
But I hope this is just the beginning of your exploration into the world of sideshow performers and the complex legacy they left behind.
Yeah, it's definitely worth exploring further.
Thanks for joining us.